Hey, you want to know how Trump's going to fix the midterms? I'm going to lay it out for you step by step, but before I do, and before you just swipe past me thinking I'm crazy, this is not the first time I've done this. In 2022, I told you that ICE would be rounding up people on the streets in mass, and that it wouldn't just be limited to undocumented people, although that's still horrific, but that temporary visa holders and anyone else that gets caught up in the mess would be in trouble, and that's exactly what's happened. The camps, the targeting of political opponents, the designating of left-wing organizations as terrorist groups, engineering wars both for profit and for his authoritarian agenda. I will say I did not predict Canada and Greenland, but come on. But generally I've been right, and every time I do, most people think I'm nuts. So here we go again. Take it for what it's worth, I guess. As usual, I'm going to tap into both what they say and history. And when it comes to the good old-fashioned style of classic election fixing, we got to turn to Trump's buddy in Russia. Putin's first fixed election was in the year 2000. He used both his administrative power, having friends in the government essentially controlling things, and his media power. He started with the takeover of independent media, and what he would do is he would starve them of advertisers, and when they were in a vulnerable position, he would have their friends buy them. Now, I seem to remember a social media app that Congress, under Biden, made toxic for advertisers, setting things up for Trump's boy Larry Ellison to swoop in and purchase. Paramount, CBS, Twitter, Sinclair, the list goes on and on. I think Trump's got the media control part down, unfortunately. And then we get into pressuring state workers. Remember that infamous call that Trump made to Brian Kemp trying to get 14,000 votes? Where do you think he got that idea? He's just much stupider, but not stupid enough, unfortunately. And that didn't even work then, but things have changed quite a bit in red states. And don't forget, they tried to rig the election before. And sadly, the biggest way that they can help him has already been done. As was another one of my predictions, that Republicans would win the gerrymandering fight. And now, none of my California neighbors know who the hell they're voting for, but I digress. Republicans made gains in Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, Alabama, Louisiana, Missouri, and Tennessee. Now, for the next part, we're going to do a quick trip over to Egypt in 2005. The dictator was Hosni Mubarak. He got very aggressive and put security forces around polling locations in opposition turf. In some places, they actually physically stopped people from even entering the building. Putin, on the other hand, was a little bit more subtle and did things a little bit differently. He actually used security forces to ship in votes. They would bust them in, and then senior officers would pressure soldiers into voting for Putin while they watched who they voted for. All right, let's stop for a minute and talk about what we can expect from Trump in this regard before we get into the really scary surveillance AI stuff. Start with what I don't think we'll see, and that's the military on the streets forcing people to vote for Trump. I really don't think Trump has the loyalty yet in our armed forces. Where he does have that loyalty, though, is ICE. With ICE, I think you'll see some voting coercion, but a lot of polling place intimidation. And this is why I think their non-specific targeting of brown people is very intentional. They want even citizens worried that they'll be caught up in this so they don't show up to the polls. I worry a lot about our Latino friends in Texas, for instance. But finally, the way that they'll probably have the biggest impact is through mass surveillance, and it's likely the way that Elon won Pennsylvania for Trump. We're now pushing back on things like flock cameras, but they've been doing pattern analysis since Trump started last year. The advanced technologies of Palantir and ICE, but also just technology that's available to any advertiser. Putin used this in more recent history very effectively. And Trump's again modeling that, and the first thing they've done is to track organizers, specifically election day organizers, the ones that get out the vote. This has actually already started, but what you're going to see is them go after these people on minor administrative charges just to keep them out of the way for enough time. This will really throw off voting day operations. And then they'll do what they've been doing since 2015, but now they can do it much better. They know where you go online, all of your interests, where you go during the day. Even the content of your private conversations, they know everything. So you're going to get tailored deepfakes placed in front of you, fake voting information, and messaging that's designed to discourage and lower turnout. Maybe even threats. Has anyone else been getting those weird Israel text messages? When you have enough data points, you can predict behavior, not necessarily for an individual, but with a group. This is probably why Elon knew Trump won before it was even over. This kind of tracking is probably going to happen right up to the point where you go in the polls because there's facial recognition technology all over the place now. With all of this and the fecklessness of blue states, Trump probably will have the ability to at least fix enough of the election for what he needs. Not necessarily stopping a Democratic House majority, but lowering it and stopping a majority in the Senate. And then when he runs again in 2028, he'll have 2 years to see what had worked, what didn't, and to prepare ahead of time. Well, thanks, Tony, but what the hell do we do? There are answers. I'm just not sure Dems are willing to do them. Every polling location should be deemed a safe zone that's protected by state law enforcement and preventing immigration activity near polling locations. Blue states should be laying the hammer down on social media companies, especially TikTok, where most people get their news. They should pass laws protecting political speech like red states did under Biden. And of course, unleash attorneys to monitor polling locations. And maybe even consider teams of people or state-run AI to just mass report misinformation out there. Dems should be using advertising to notify the public about all this and distributing best practices guides. And then in red states, volunteers should try to do as much of this as they can on some level, like extra poll watchers or volunteer or party-funded security. And there's lots and lots of other ideas. You can put them in the comment section here if you'd like. They just have to have the will. And I don't know if the will from our leadership is there, especially seeing what Hakeem Jeffries has to offer now. But at least you and I can still do what we can to prepare.